this looks like it should be a quiet week in terms of Doctor Who news. You know, we got the new companion announcement. We've not even got an episode being broadcast for about 11 months now, because we're coming to the end of November, the beginning of December, and Doctor Who's not coming back until next November. We've had the companion announced, we've had all of this stuff, so it seems like things should be quiet in terms of normal Doctor Who news, which is why we're going for rumours. This is from the Daily Mirror, which is a tabloid publication in the UK, so normally we'd be absolutely within our rights to completely ignore this. However, this comes from journalist Nicola Medvin, who actually has a really good track record writing for the Daily Mirror in terms of Doctor Who rumours and scoops. She was the one who initially broke the story that Bradley Walsh would be the next Doctor Who companion when Jodie Whittaker took over in the TARDIS, and she was correct. They were also joined by Mandip Gill and Tosin Cole for Series 11. And Nicola also broke the story that Jodie Whittaker would be leaving in the near future. I think maybe she broke the story a bit earlier than the actual reality of the situation panned out, but she was still one of the ones who credibly reported that Jodie Whittaker would be leaving at the end of the next series. So Nicola Medvin is actually a journalist who does have a good track record for this publication, so let's read what she has to say. Doctor Who adversaries, such as the Cybermen and Daleks, are to get their own series, an insider says. Showrunner Russell T Davies is pushing ahead with plans to expand the, quote, Whoniverse with Marvel-style spin-offs. It comes after the BBC struck a deal with Disney Plus worth, quote, tens of millions last month. The Beeb sold the US giant the global streaming rights to Doctor Who outside the UK. The deal means budgets on the 2024 series starring the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa, could triple. A source says, fans can expect to see Sontarans, Weeping Angels, and Sea Devils in separate series showing what they get up to when the Doctor isn't there to stop them, along with Daleks and Cybermen. Speaking last year, Davis said that these exciting new projects were part of what lured him back to the BBC, and he suggested there was even scope for a Doctor Who dedicated channel. Quote, there are things coming up that are brand new ways of telling stories that have never been done before, he explained. So it just feels new. I wouldn't have gone back if it wasn't feeling new. The showrunner already has form for expanding the Doctor Who universe. In his first tenure as the reboot boss from 2005, he was behind Torchwood, starring John Barrowman, and the Sarah Jane Adventures featuring Elizabeth Sladen in the title role. Quote, we should be sitting here announcing the Nyssa Adventures or the return of Donna Noble, Davis said last year. The whole science fiction world is so creative and so money-making right now, I think your wildest dreams can come true. Is this true? Right, so I'm in two minds about this. I have absolutely no doubt that with Bad Wolf and Russ T Davies at the helm, there are a couple of ideas that are maybe written on some sort of whiteboard deep in the bowels of Bad Wolf. That does not surprise me at all. However, I think what would be very smart for Russ T Davies and Bad Wolf to do is to just see how Series 14 goes and how everything with Ncuti Gatwa runs smoothly in that first production and everything, that first production block, making sure that they're able to turn the production into a well-oiled machine before they can actually start talking about making spin-offs proper. I think actually having ideas written down and getting a couple of people from respective parties involved. For example, you cannot do anything with the Daleks without the approval of the Terry Nation estate, and the Terry Nation estate are normally pretty good at, you know, allowing the BBC and allowing Big Finish, for example, to use the Daleks and to have them tell stories that broaden their impact in the Doctor Who universe. But whether or not they do that for Disney Plus and do that for Bad Wolf, that still remains to be seen. I'm sure there wouldn't be any issues, but a spin-off show, and you know, that will require a big sign-off from the Terry Nation estate. And also, I imagine, quite a big paycheck as well. I also think there's a massive difference between greenlighting a spin-off around a companion and greenlighting a spin-off surrounding a main antagonist in the series, because characters like the Cybermen and the Daleks, for the most part, are not very interesting in terms of just standalone personalities. Or they can be interesting, but can they carry like 8 to 10 episodes? I'm not sure if they can. But I do think that, for example, the Daleks, a spin-off with them could actually work if we were to follow the Daleks proper. We had that animated Dalek series as part of Time Lord Victorious, and those were like 10-minute episodes. There were 5 or 6. How many of... Actually, 2 seconds, let's find those things. So there were 5 episodes of this animated Dalek series from Time Lord Victorious, and this was actually pretty good. The animation is quite primitive, but I think the writing and the personality of the Dalek Emperor and the Dalek Strategist as they were trying to outmaneuver some evil, massive cosmic entity from the dawn of time, that was actually really good. I really enjoyed that. But can you sustain 30 to 45 minute episodes and like 8 or 10 episodes at a time? I'm not sure if they can. I actually think a good Dalek series would be something revolving around like a group of maybe resistance fighters or something. It would be very Star Wars centric. It would be like Andor. It would be like something like Rogue One, a Star Wars story, where it is a group of people who are trying to combat the Daleks without the Doctor around. I actually think that would be really, really cool. And every so often you do get these scenes or subplots where you go into the Dalek ship and you see what they're up to. But when it comes to the Cybermen, though, I actually think if you were to center a story with the Cybermen, you do it with a Shard. And my pitch for that type of idea would be the pitch that I gave at the end of Cybersember, where it's a like parallel Earth or a civilization or some human equivalent twin planet or Mondas or something, ruled by a political elite that has its boot on the neck of the population, and they sell getting rid of emotions as a way to keep them complacent, so they can't feel that boot on their neck anymore. And a Shad could start off, like, bring Patrick O'Kane back. I think you absolutely bring him back as, like, one of the lead characters. And he decides to volunteer himself for the upgrade and the start of the cyber wars and stuff. I think that would be really, really cool. I think that is genuinely a great workaround to try and fill in the gaps that the TV series proper, the Chibnall era, refused to fill in. That would be so much more interesting. And I'm aware that Big Finish have done like Dalek Empire spin-offs and Cyberman spin-offs and things like that, but there is a difference between Big Finish doing those series in the like early 2000s to them doing it now for a TV audience. One thing that we need to understand for this BBC and Disney Plus deal is that Disney Plus do not have the right do they have the right? Simply touch one wire against the other and we get these spin-offs. Disney cannot make spin-offs exclusively for Disney Plus. They have to go through the BBC and Bad Wolf, I imagine Bad Wolf as well. They would have to be taking up the distribution rights for any prospective spin-offs internationally. So, for example, if there were to be a Shad, a Cyberman story, or whatever, that would be something that is primarily made for the BBC and for like BBC 2 or BBC 3 or the iPlayer or whatever, and then Disney Plus takes that internationally and puts it on Disney Plus. They can't make Dalek Sec a Dalek story starring the Daleks and make it a Disney Plus paid subscription exclusive. That deal does not allow them to do that. But in terms of other spin-off ideas, Dan Lowes has got a really good one. Victorian era Torchwood. Basically just go to Big Finish, and those are some of the really fun ideas that they could do. Yeah, there was a Juno Dawson who wrote like a Charlie's Angels style American spin-off for Torchwood. That was really, really cool. You could do a story with Joe Martin as the fugitive Doctor. That would be, I'm sure there's some incredible fan demand for that as well. We've got also some super chats as well from Almac Productions with the very generous £4.49 super chat.
Wonderful chat. All of them.
If Disney approached you to make a Doctor Who spin-off produced and set in the States, what would you do? I think an American-based one would be very interesting. Obviously, it would be made primarily for a UK audience, because that's how the BBC and Bad Wolf and Disney deal would go. But trying to set something predominantly in America, it would be, I don't know why my mind went here, but something like, Adipose Industries deciding to expand their corporate territory by going to America. I'd really like to try and see that. But I also think doing Torchwood in America, that's not a bad approach. They tried to do it with Miracle Day, but they tried to have all of the Cardiff holdovers, and there were so many elements to that story that just were not working. So I think, maybe separate it entirely from the conventional Torchwood team and have a brand new one in the States and get Juno Dawson to write it. That's something I would like to maybe That's something I'd like to try and see them do. You want to avoid the perception of it being like the American version of Coupling or the American version of the In-Betweeners, because so many of those American spin-offs or American reimaginings and American remakes are just generally pretty terrible, and you just don't want those at all. So, Unit North America, maybe. Who would you have as their brigadier type though? Like, genuinely, who would you cast as? Like, obviously they wouldn't be the brigadier, but in the brigadier type role, what would you do? Who would you get? That would be a very interesting casting decision. We also have Mick Ron, a 15 Israeli news shekel super chat. Thank you so much.
Wonderful chap. All of them.
I hope it's going to be one spin-off. Each episode can follow a different villain, or if it is separate shows, I'd love one that focuses on the Master. Yeah, what Big Finish tend to do is that they tend to get a range or a cast of characters and then do like 30 box sets with them. For example, I think we're approaching our 9th or our 10th box set with Derek Jacobi as the War Master. You don't need 9 to 10 seasons of the War Master for Disney Plus, but I do think getting Derek Jacobi for 5 or 6 hour-long episodes or something, that would be one hell of a get. That also adds real like prestige to the project as well, getting Derek Jacobi on board. And that is a gap or corner of the Doctor Who universe that you genuinely could explore. And because Scott Hancock was the original like script editor for the War Master range, and he is now the script editor for Doctor Who proper, there is that sort of continuity. I do know that the War Master box sets are continuing on without Scott Hancock, but I just think that would be a really fun connection. But yeah, I don't want Russell T Davies and many others at Bad Wolf to get way ahead of themselves. Obviously, they have shepherded a Doctor Who universe and spin-offs in the past. They did it with during his era with Doctor Who, with Torchwood, with the Sarah Jane Adventures. But I don't want them to do it right out of the gate. You've got to establish Shooty first. You've got to establish that new vibe, that new run with the production team, and then you expand outwards from there. No issue with them like conjuring up ideas for a 10-part Sea Devil story, but there are some villains which are more deserving of spin-offs than others. I don't think you could get 10 episodes of the Sontarans unless it was about the Paternoster gang and you had like Strax and Jenny and Vastra. I think what Disney are doing, and it's working really well for them at the moment, is that they are not pitching or greenlighting like 5 seasons of The Mandalorian. They are stories set in the Star Wars universe, and you have these series which are set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they're not doing like several season-long blocks of them. It's like one season with She-Hulk, it's one season with what we're getting with Daredevil in the near future, one season of Hawkeye, etc., etc., one season of Loki, and then a second one a few years later. And for Star Wars, we've got 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. I think a third one's coming out as well. We've got 1 season of Boba Fett, we've got 1 series of Andor, etc. So I think audience reception is like the audiences are absolutely fine with just 1 or 2 seasons with these characters. So you can have 1 season with Nyssa, you can have 1 season with Daleks, you can have 1 season, etc., etc., without saying, okay, we are now doing Torchwood and we're doing 4 seasons of it. I think they are able to, because of streaming, because of the Whoniverse possibilities, they are able to basically do a spin-off a year. Like, for example, if there were to be like 10 episodes with Shooty Gatwa at the beginning of the year. Oh, what are you going to do between like April and December? Oh, it turns out in the autumn, we've got like 6 or 7 episodes of a spin-off show. So you do kind of have Doctor Who all year round, or bookending the year. I think that would be the best approach for it. I generally feel that fans have far too high expectations for spin-offs. Paternoster Gang, Ashad, Weeping Angels. No, if it's anything, it's a villain anthology, Daleks and Paul McGann. I do think a Paul McGann series would be terrific. Paul McGann, Joe Martin, those are the Doctors that I think you can get away with doing full-blown spin-offs for. But in terms of villain series, you either need to center it around a human or partially human protagonist like Ashad, or you do need to have the Daleks are the villains in a Dalek-centric spin-off series. They're not the main characters. They are not the focal point. Davina S, do you think RTD will stay with 10 episodes per series? I hope so. But like between 8 and 10, I think the time of 13 episode production blocks, those years are long gone. TV, like the TV economy in the UK is just not able to sustain that anymore. The budgets don't stretch far enough, unfortunately. And we do also have a massive like recruitment issue in the UK because there's so much nepotism towards the top of the crew list. So people from like near the bottom rung struggle to actually move their way up, which means there's a massive shortage of like first ADs, there's a massive shortage of floor managers and things like that. So there's a massive recruitment and crewing issue in the UK film and TV industry right now that we're just seemingly unable to fix because we just love our nepotism too much and we love our exclusion too much. That's just how Brits work, isn't it? And if you were to have something like a unit series as well, then you get your military UK-based show. The Doctor can pop in for an episode or something, or you can get a companion in. Like at the end of The Power of the Doctor, Kate Stewart was saying, I might have to have a word with you, I might have to recruit some of you. And yeah, you can have a companion. Like, can you imagine in Unit Series 1 for Disney Plus, and oh no, we're being pinned down by the Daleks, and they're shooting us, and we can't get away from our cover, they're going to kill us. And then all of a sudden, Ian Chad Chesterton, played by William Russell at the age of 98, like storms in, flanked by mechanoids and is like hasta la vista baby and starts like gunning them all down. That would be the most epic moment of the entirety of Doctor Who Whoniverse history. Tony Parker, William Russell in his Crusaders armor. 1 second, let's find that. He walks in wearing this and nobody mentions it or brings it up. He's just wearing his Crusaders armor. We can have CGI Ian Chesterton with the Disney money. Yeah, that's another thing. Like, because I was thinking about this the other week about like what would a tripling of Doctor Who's budget actually get the series? Because you can say whatever the hell you like about the Jodie Whittaker era of Doctor Who, the show has never looked better. Like, I think Series 11 had a weird filter, had a weird grain like over it for whatever reason. But in terms of the cinematography, the production value, some of the stuff in like the Halloween Apocalypse and the Power of the Doctor, some of the best effects and some of the most creative and great cinematography in Doctor Who's history. Genuinely incredible, impressive stuff. So what would tripling the budget get you? And then I realised Disney has a lot of deep fake technology that they've been pioneering for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for the Star Wars shows as well, where they had like an algorithm do a deep fake of like young Mark Hamill for The Mandalorian. And that's not cheap technology, but that's something that Disney has access to and can presumably give Bad Wolf access to it as well. They've also got the Volume as well, which is the big LED screens which they're able to do for shows like Obi-Wan and The Mandalorian, but not Andor though. Andor had actual location filming, so they could do that as well. But yeah, stuff like deepfakes, it seems like, that if you were to triple the budget, if you had to spend that triple budget, then that's one way you could eat into that money. That's how they do it. Not just deepfake, they had a Mark Hamill text to speak. Yeah, it's algorithms really starting to muddy the water between what's a genuine performance or not. I still think, I'll die on this hill, that in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, I think if you did not know that Peter Cushing was dead, if you did not have that prerequisite going into that film, you'd think he was real. It's only because fans, of course, know who Tarkin is and know that the actor Peter Cushing is dead, that they were able to, like, they called him Grand Moff Tintin because he looked like the Tintin motion capture film from Spielberg, played by Jamie Bell. I think with some scrutiny, you'd be like, this guy looks a bit, I don't know. But, like, because you knew that it was not Peter Cushing because he died decades ago, you would actually initially believe it. I think the more you looked at it, you might be able to see through the cracks. But I think that he didn't age for 40 years. But we're talking about like a prospective viewer who has maybe not watched Star Wars before or is younger and doesn't quite understand the behind-the-scenes productions, or they can't name all of the cast members behind the scenes. So I think that they would go into Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and not realise that Tarkin is a CGI character. I think the technology is that good. Okay, actually, he looks a bit glossy here. This looks like an animated film.
Relating through the city.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't look as good as I remember. He looks very shiny. I think it's the shine. It's okay. That looks a bit better once the lighting's a little bit darker, and he doesn't look like he's just like Vaselined his forehead.
It's finished, Governor Tarkin, the Senate.
But then again, did they like shiny up Ben Mendelsohn's face? So maybe it is just the lighting. Maybe it's just the scene. But yeah, this does look convincing. Looks like Beowulf. No. Like, maybe not being completely literal here, but this does look good.
The Emperor will tolerate no further delay.
And when was this? This was 2016. This was 6 years ago. The technology has definitely progressed over the years. This does look good, and I think it looks good enough that the uninitiated wouldn't know that this is a CGI character, at least for a bit. It still looks like Stuff of Nightmares to me, probably because you know that this isn't a real person. Although who played him who actually played him on set? He was an actor who actually did look a lot like him. Guy Henry. And people were saying, why didn't you just get Guy Henry to play him? Like, he doesn't like look like a dead ringer for Tarkin, but you could still like pass that. You put him in the costume and do his hair, and you could just be like, yeah, he just looks different because he's a different actor.